Hello again, everybody. Scott Casper, Tony Hager for Takedown Media. Our conversation on the sport of wrestling continues. This time we head to New Jersey, and Jared Platt is waiting in the wings to join us in this Nike hot seat.
Apparently, my daughter's joined up too.
Well, nice.
How's everybody doing today?
As soon as the camera went on, there's Kylie. Hi, Kylie.
That's how it goes. This is totally her. She's her father's daughter.
I cautioned her on brushing her hair, and she did nothing. Nothing.
She brushes her hair about as often as I do.
Well, in that case, never. All right, so let's talk to us a bit about Jared Platt, so you folks understand who we're talking about. Jared wrestled at 26 years old. Jared wrestled for Blair. He wrestled for Penn State. Left about the same time Troy Sunderland left, right before Cale Sanderson got there. Went back to New Jersey to start training mixed martial arts and continued training young wrestlers. Formed a relationship, continued a relationship with Jeff Buxton, one of the famed names in training young people in the sport of wrestling, one of the greats. And the kids that wrestle with Jared Platt and Jeff Buxton get an education, if you will, a collegiate degree, even while in junior high. They are getting an incredible degree with these guys. And one of the things that we found interesting about Jared is Jared has been wrestling with diabetes for 20 years of his life. I think, Jared, you were diabetically diagnosed when you were what, 6?
I was 8. I was 8.
8 years old.
And that's a tough age. That's a tough age for kids in general, let alone when you tell kids, they're going to have to check their blood sugar every hour and they're going to not be able to eat or, freely kind of go and play and do what they want to do.
It's a tough act to be in, if, let's say, as a professional athlete, to have diabetes type 1. Describe the different types of diabetes, because there are several, and how it affects you as a person, and then we'll get into how it affects you as an athlete.
Right. So really, there are 2 types of diabetes, and I guess there are 3 if you want to count gestational diabetes for a pregnant woman. Not anything that's going to apply to me, at least I hope. So there's type 1, which is the type that I have. They call it juvenile diabetes, which is a little bit of an outdated term because it's not just juveniles that are diagnosed with it. There's also type 2 diabetes, but they're fairly unrelated illnesses. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease, and type 2 is, I don't even know. It's the lack of ability for your body to recognize insulin resistance, from a lack of diet and things like that. Type 1, they think it's caused by a virus. When I was a kid, I was sick for months and months and months, and then, boom, blood sugar's 800, and near coma. So there are big differences between the different types, and so I think that's part of the reason there's a lot of this confusion, because people don't know what you're talking about when you say you have diabetes. Are you type 1? Are you type 2? Or is it 'cause did you do it to yourself? So there are a lot of questions about it, and I totally understand that.
Jared Platt, our guest. We're talking about diabetes and wrestling, and perhaps that's our jump on here, Jared, is how has wrestling impacted your life with diabetes?
Well, for everybody that wrestles, and they know that, wrestling builds character. Wrestling builds you mentally, physically, obviously, but mentally and emotionally is where I got most of my benefit from wrestling. Now, physically, growing my strength and increasing the ability to endure pain, I think's really helped. But mentally, there have been such highs and lows with diabetes. I've been in the hospital. I had at the Powerade tournament, coaching for Blair Academy. I don't know if I've ever been more embarrassed in my life. Scott, I had a low blood sugar attack, and luckily there were people around that knew how to deal with it, and I had a seizure in front of thousands of people. Went down vomiting all over myself, it's nasty. I even inappropriately grabbed a lady accidentally while I was going down. I just remember grabbing my kid and telling him, go get coach. Go find coach. I need coach. And he freaked out, and that was it. Then I went down. So it's been a tough road, but, through diabetes and the training that I've had to endure and, the losses and, national events and all of these things that I've experienced have ultimately led to my ability to cope with such a serious illness that people don't really understand. Every day it's a balancing act of high blood sugar, low blood sugar, and in between, that's where you want to be. You go too high, bad things happen. You go too low, bad things happen. So it's definitely a balancing act, but without wrestling, I don't know how I would have been able to figure my body out and my mind out enough to be successful.
You were a very high-level wrestler, and I'm assuming your doctors did not want you to wrestle when growing up.
Well, it's amazing because nowadays I tell my doctors that they told me that, and they're all like, some doctors. But it's the kind of thing where people are cautious. I had parents when I was a kid, parents of friends that wouldn't let me go on the beach with bare feet because they were afraid I'd jab my foot, it would get infected, and then I'd have to get it amputated, which isn't crazy. But at the same time, as a kid, I needed to be on the beach running, having fun, doing normal things. But yeah, they told me to stop, and that was maybe, one of the biggest reasons that I kept pushing like I did and pushed my body like I did, and strived for that success.
I remember one of our first conversations was, why are you leaving Penn State? A lot of people thought you'd been kicked off the Penn State wrestling team. Far be it.
I know that was great. That was awesome. The slander.
I thankfully wasn't one that I chose to ask the question.
Of course,
and you know what? You told me what it was, and I guess even staying there that year, that it became more real to you, and you were more comfortable. You still weren't quite there, and then you suffered the shoulder injury. And this is my question with regard to diabetes and the shoulder injury. Does being a diabetic, specifically a type 1 diabetic, does it make you more susceptible to injury?
That's a really good question, Scott, and I would have to say yes. I can't sugarcoat it. If you're not in control of your blood sugar, high blood sugar causes tremendous stress on your body, your joints, your body, your internal organs. Renal failure, heart attack. All of these things are very real possibilities for diabetics. And, I had to deal with these things. And actually, the shoulder injury, that was nothing. I got that thing scoped. The big injury for me was I actually fractured 2 vertebrae in my back. And so, it definitely begs the question, do diabetics get hurt more? Or maybe it's just wrestling's intense. And, I've been pushing and pushing and pushing my whole life. But, blood acidity can definitely, one, lead to a slower healing time. But also, you're not putting yourself in a good situation for healing in general. So yeah, I would have to say it's probably easier for diabetics, especially under stress, to have problems and injuries. And it's more difficult for them to heal as well. So, absolutely.
So at Penn State, your freshman year, your redshirt year, you weren't competing as a Nittany Lion. You were unattached, and you ended up tearing your MCL. I mean, you've gone through a lot of injuries in your time, and climbing the Olympic ladder. I'm just curious, when you were practicing, did you have to be monitored, or did you know your body at that point, since you've been living with diabetes for so long, when you needed to, tone it down a little bit or sit out and practice?
Right. Well, I mean, that's one of those things that you may think you're understanding your body, but to be honest, as a diabetic, there are so many variables that non-diabetics can't comprehend, because it's humidity, it's temperature, it's food that day, it's stress that day, it's a number of things, and then how they couple So monitoring is key. On days I was competing, I was checking my blood sugar 3 dozen times to make sure I was in optimal performance range. Because if you're not, your body shuts down. You can't put yourself through that kind of stress and sustain it. So yeah, training was difficult, but I got to feel, those lows. I could feel the lows, and Coach Buxton could see the lows. He would say, "Platt, get Gatorade." I'd say, "I'm good." He'd say, "Get Gatorade." I'd go get some Gatorade, and then I'd be back to working hard. He'd see me start to slow down, and so yeah, that balancing act is a tough one, but it's something that's manageable, especially even competing at that high of a level. It's possible, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot, and now I'm in a position where it costs a lot to live. And the average cost for a type 1 diabetic with insurance, with a premium insurance coverage, is still around $10,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you've got a good job, still a lot of that's going to diabetic supplies.
Think about that. 10% of the people in the United States have diabetes, and the cost is still $10,000 a year for the average patient. You would
That's
think
the trap. They call that the trap, Scott.
that is a trap.
Yeah.
And thanks to our good friends at McDonald's and other fast food stores, that they're not assisting that. I didn't want to take a shot at McDonald's there, but they're trying.
Oh, I'd love to. McDonald's, please stop. Just leave. Ronald, you're a clown, but not in the good kind of way.
No,
please.
Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. All right, so we're going to take you from Penn State. You figure, well, wrestling, you think Iowa Hawkeyes. They had recruited you heavily. You reached out to them about becoming a Hawkeye after your time with Penn State, but you'd done one thing at PSU, and that you'd let your grades slide. How were you going to handle that?
That was something that, looking back, obviously hindsight's 2020, and it was the kind of thing where I was unhappy, and all I wanted to do was wrestle, which was my mistake. So I let my grades slip, and so what I had to do was I was wrestling at, going to school at Iowa Central Community College, where many great wrestlers have gone, many great MMA fighters, and I ended up changing my wrestling style because my back, so my stance goes from, stance to now I'm, trying to defend shots like Frankenstein. and so, that was tough for me. And so again, diabetes, blessing and a curse, because I had to be quiet about a lot, because that's just how it was. If I were to be constantly complaining, I could be, but that's not who I am. That's not how I was raised. That's not how I was coached. So, I often, put the facade up, put that tough front up where I wasn't hurting. And ultimately, my back ended up at an open tournament. My back ended up just being really bad, and I lost the use of my right leg for a couple hours. And even still, I've gotten back to training and wrestling and working and teaching, and but still I have problems with my right leg, and I've seen a chiropractor, hundreds of thousands of times probably, and they've saved me. I really believe in chiropractic care, especially for wrestlers, because the trauma that you receive on your neck, your lower back, is tremendous, and we've got to do things to keep our athletes healthy.
You had gotten to a point, and Tony, you and I had gone over this before the interview, is that he'd gotten to a point where after wrestling at Iowa Central and in so much pain, like he said, losing the strength of one leg, he knew he needed to get home. He wasn't getting the appropriate kind of medical advice. As a matter of fact, they were telling him that there was nothing wrong. Obviously, the x-rays, the MRIs, and things that were coming back were giving you some indication that there was something wrong. But you went to the hospital in New Jersey. Your buddy drove your car home, and you got the assistance you needed. Special surgery in New York. They looked, and they saw 2 fractures of the vertebrae that that had appeared to have healed and also major damage to other parts of your back that would need constant rehab, but wrestling was not going to be possible. How was that to take as an athlete at your age? I mean, we're so powerful and so strong at that age, and we know literally everything. How did you take that?
You know, to say that it didn't like mentally break me and emotionally break me, you know, I'd be lying. I was around 225 before that you know, final serious injury, because you know my back kind of progressed to the height that it did, and I was in so much pain, and you know they were trying to put me on so many different pills to, you know, relax my muscles or to deal with the pain or, you know, to sleep and, you know, all of those things. I lost a tremendous amount of weight, about 50 pounds. I was down to about 180 pounds. And I will say that, you know, despite that sense of brokenness, deep down, I knew it wasn't the end. It couldn't be. It'd been my whole life. It couldn't be the end, not then. And so, you know, I let some time go by, and, you know, emotionally things were healing up and physically things began to heal. And so I started lifting, slowly getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I gained an additional 70 pounds. I went from 180 to about 240, you know, 245. So it was tough. It was a long road, but I think at first it really shook me and almost broke me a little bit, but must have been just bent, not broke, because, you know, I ended up coming back, and my body came back better than ever. You know, just like after my shoulder surgery, rehab got me back.
Cael Sanderson had recruited you to Iowa State, and you left right before his arrival at Penn State. You ended up back at Penn State under the new staff. It was almost like a dream come true.
It wasn't almost. It was. You know, I had Cael. I have never used a VHS tape recorder in my life until Cael Sanderson was wrestling in the finals of the NCAA tournament. You know, this is a guy that I've watched since I was a kid. You know, this was a guy that, you know, was just the highest of the high there, you know. And when I got that chance to go back, it was like, you know, I was pretty blown away. And actually, a couple of weeks into being back at Penn State and getting to the swing of things, I found out, my wife and I found out we were expecting. She's my wife now. My girlfriend at the time, we were expecting our first child. And because of and that's you. That's you. You're the one. And she said, me? Yes. And the NCAA committee, which I'm not going to call myself a fan of, was already making it very difficult for me to compete and for me to get eligibility, because I had transferred out, you know, out of the Big Ten and then back into the Big Ten. And even though it was Penn State to Penn State, it was still a conference transfer, and so no more scholarship. And I don't come from money. I don't have money. So I was financially under a great deal of stress that year, taking the brunt of an out-of-state tuition to Penn State. So, you know, when we got the news about our baby that we were expecting, I pretty much withdrew out of school and actually was close to working on a fishing boat, on a commercial fishing boat. Luckily, that didn't pan out. And Phil Davis called me from San Diego, and he wanted me to come train UFC with him and work on some wrestling stuff. And since then, we've been like best friends. And you know, he's one of my brothers. He saved me from probably drowning in the Atlantic Ocean.
He maybe even saved you from fiscal ruin, because Phil paid you to come out and train and prepare him for UFC fights, all the while preparing yourself for what would become a athletic comeback of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Phil saved me in more than one way. You know, he saved me fiscally. He saved me physically. I literally have died in front of Phil Davis.
That's amazing.
Yeah, on my back, and I'll never forget waking up. You know, I don't. It felt like I was dreaming before, and then everything was white, and it felt like I was traveling through this. I don't know. It's very hard to explain. There's no words. I can't explain it. What felt like days later, all I recall is feeling like this. And I woke up and blurred to clear vision, Phil, his roommate, and the paramedics. And the guy that I am, Phil's roommate at the time was training to be a firefighter and an EMT. And so I woke up and I saw Chula Vista Fire Department, Chula Vista EMT, and I wake up, you know, and I see everybody around me, and I see Chula Vista Fire Department. I said, CVFD, give this guy a job. That was the first thing I said. And they all just were like, what? And but you know, a couple minutes later, after the EMTs left, I broke down a little bit. And you know, being that close to death a couple of times, I think has really, you know, changed me and changed my priorities a little bit. And you know, I wouldn't trade the experiences for anything in the world.
Diabetes is something you're living with as a fighter, as a coach. Show them the insulin pump, would you please?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, shout out to Medtronic. You know, they make amazing supplies and they have great customer care. They're really taking care of me. And I know a few of my wrestlers are actually type 1s. It's growing. There are a lot of us out there now. And they do great things for diabetics. It's really awesome. I even have a sensor that hooks up. It actually got pulled off in practice. But there's a constant glucose monitoring sensor that I've been putting on my arm, so blood sugar testing isn't completely necessary. It'll tell my pump. They communicate from sensor to pump. Says, you know, blood sugar under target range, which is incredible for me because I've nearly died from low blood sugar. Lots of times, you know, probably 6, 8, 10 times. You know, I've had 5 seizures, I think. And so the way the sensor works is it shuts my pump off once the pump receives the information that my blood sugar is below the threshold that I've set. So 70 to 100, I'm good. But I drop below 70, my pump shuts off.
Folks, you can find out more about what we're talking about today with Jared Platt, fightingtype-1.com. That's his website. You can also subscribe to Jared's YouTube channel, which is Team Diabetic. We encourage you to check out his website as well. I think you'd be very, very interested to hear about what he has to say. 10% of Americans and those around the world, and the number continues to grow daily, are diagnosed and live with diabetes, and in this particular case, diabetes type 1, or otherwise known as juvenile diabetes. I understand we've only touched on the tip of the iceberg. You ain't heard nothing yet. Jared Platt is a living, breathing dream about wrestling and diabetic, being a diabetic, and I say dream because what he wants to do, the strength of the wrestler, is actually showing through. He's had several setbacks, as most wrestlers do, but he's dealt with it to the best of his ability, getting the right type of medical assistance and the right type of medical advice. We encourage you to do the same thing. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Don't be shy about getting an insulin shot in public. As a matter of fact, I know many people that are doing it publicly just so they can have the
Yeah.
conversation about diabetic and being diabetic and having diabetes. But if you'd like more information, we encourage you to check out the website fightingtype1.wordpress.com. Easy enough to get to, but Jared is one of us, always has been, always will be, and it's one of the heroes of my life. When we first met on the phone, you were a little defensive because you thought I was going to be one of those guys that was going to just call you right out on being let go, if you will, by PA.
I recall that. Yeah. I recall. Well, I had probably a dozen reporters call me and say, "How do you respond to the allegations of you being thrown off the Penn State wrestling team?" I was like, well, considering this is the first time I'm hearing about it, I have no response.
It sucks. All right, so we're going to continue this conversation in the future as Jared continues to balance and looks to continue his MMA career, his coaching career. Hats off to Jeff Buxton, who is missing a finger. You weren't there for that day, were you? The fan experience?
Old five-finger buck?
Old five-finger buck.
No, I wasn't there, but that was like one day I wasn't at practice. But I heard about it, and it was funny. Last night, we get it all the time, and, coaches were warming up or you're getting ready for a match, and coach, gives the guy a little slap back in the neck, back of the, shoulder, and it was coach because his signature is there. He's missing the index. Missing the index.
Never move a fan that's on.
No. Well, I think he was trying to save a kid because I think the fan was falling. So I think he put his hand up to it and to stop it from falling, and it's
a better story. It's a better story.
Came down.
Jared Platt, brother, I love you. My best to beautiful wife Candace, obviously the joy and love of your life. Kylie and the new 3-month-old Kara. You're a lucky, lucky man indeed. I'm just grateful you're choosing to share this. Folks, check out his blog, check out his video blogs. I think you'll be suitably impressed with the man that he's become and the one he's growing into. Jared, we appreciate it. Anybody you want to thank on the way home here as we head out?
Absolutely. Number one, I want to thank my family. My wife, my mom, my dad. Without them, I'd be dead. And but also Coach Buxton, because he's been like a father to me. He's been my coach, my wrestling partner, my friend. He's been a lot, my mentor. I owe a lot to him, and and also Dave Mastro Giovanni. We're doing amazing things in Sparta, and he's such an amazing guy. Jeff and Dave. We're just doing. I'm really happy to be part of Buxton School of Wrestling and everything that goes on. But without these people in my life and the support of the wrestling community, I don't know where I would be. And I encourage you, anybody struggling with type 1, whether it's you, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, whoever it is, reach out to me. Contact me, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Find me. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to talk. I'm just very appreciative for the life that I have, and I want to give back. I want to help kids. I want to help anybody that I could help through wrestling and through diabetes.
A tough son of a gun, Jared Platt. We almost lost him from the world of wrestling to the Discovery's hit TV show Swords, Life on the Line, where he would have been a deckhand. Not even a greenhorn, but he could have been that guy. We've got a full pot.
Would have been that guy. Yeah, well, I always wanted to throw the hook. Throw the line.
Yeah.
Like a cowboy on the Atlantic.
That's it, man. Then you would have thrown your back out again, and I could just see how it all goes. But listen, Jared Platt, thank you very much for opening up today. We appreciate it. Great catching up with you as well. Again, our best to your family, and I hope you enjoyed your time today in the Nike hot seat here in Takedown Wrestling.
You know it. Always do, Scott. Thanks, man. I appreciate everything.
For all of us, for Tony Hager, I'm Scott Casper, and thanks for watching. Very special interview with Jared Platt.